right, a little bit of a special stream this afternoon as we are back at it after a long day of fun. Well, we're here this afternoon to bring you some more fun. It is me, myself, and I, along with a wonderful friend who has a YouTube channel and also spent a good long career inside the video game industry, who I met at the Rippaverse meetup, actually in Dallas. Came up, was like, hey, got these stories. We'd love to share them. I said, hey, sounds awesome. We'd love to have that, have you on. So today's stream is going to be super fun this afternoon. Bonus fun time stream we have here. We're going to start over here on YouTube or Rumble, wherever you're watching, or on X, wherever you're watching, because we are live everywhere. But we're going to finish over on sidescrollerspodcast.com. Where I'm making a concerted effort to do more things over on our locals page, which is what Side Scrollers Podcast links to. It is called a vanity URL, folks. So the first half today will be live over everywhere, and then we're going to be jumping over to the locals. Locals does require an account, but it is free to create an account. And when you create an account, you will get notified whenever we go live, because God damn it, sometimes YouTube doesn't do that. So do us a favor, head over to sidescrollerspodcast.com and become a member over there. It is totally free to be a member. If you'd like to support, you absolutely can. Once again, links are directly over my head. So I'd really appreciate that. So with that said, I'd like to introduce Tigor from Tigor's Tips. Hello, how are you?
Hey, everyone. Good.
Yeah, man. Well, welcome on in. I'm glad you're joining us today. It's been a while since I've done an interview, so I gotta crack the old knuckles and get ready to roll. But so first and foremost, man, tell us a little about yourself so people can kind of get to know you a little bit.
So at a high level, I spent 22 years in the video game industry. I started out as a programmer, quickly moved into technical director roles. I worked with a few smaller companies, which we'll get into, and then bounced over to Electronic Arts, worked with a few of their studios before going to Microsoft. I eventually moved from direct game development into publishing, and then I went over to Wizards of the Coast near the end of my career. And after a couple of years there, I pulled the plug.
So you were in the middle of, I mean, you've been at EA, which was voted several times as the worst company in America, right? You got Microsoft.
Not only that, but I worked on the game team that was the EA Spouse team.
Let's go. EA Sports or EA
Spouse?
Spouse. What is that?
We'll get to there.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. I was like, wow, dropping those Easter eggs before we get started, which is great. So you worked at EA while they were named the worst company in America. You worked for Microsoft, which Microsoft obviously is Xbox and the global, just a, one of the big three, right? And then you went to Wizards of the Coast, which, hey man, they've had their issues. But let's start at the very beginning, because apparently, I'm reading off your LinkedIn here. You got your start working on the 3DO? No,
3DO was actually partway through my career.
Okay.
It goes back further than that.
Well, continue, because I'm only going off your LinkedIn here. Let's take a step further back. So where did you start?
Well, I guess we should probably start with what got me into gaming in the first place.
Sounds great.
I don't know about you, but when I was young, my parents made the mistake of buying a console. And so I started playing games. The big game that really got me into video games was called Hunt the Wumpus.
All right. I don't.
TI-99.
Not familiar with Hunt the Wumpus.
It was there was a console made by Texas Instruments called the TI-99.
Yes.
Hunt the Wumpus was one of the games on there.
Hunt the Wumpus for the I have it pulled up right now. Yeah, of course. I remember the TI-89. I had a TI, I think I had a TI-83, I believe, was the computer that was the graphing calculator was what I had. That was a big deal. So this was the game right here that got you into it, huh?
There's a different, well, yeah, that's probably a YouTube thing.
Yeah.
That was one of the first games I played.
Okay, and what is obviously you're hunting a wumpus. Is this a wumpus here that I'm looking at here in the middle?
No, the wumpus is in pits. So it's kind of like Minesweeper, except a really early version of it.
All right. So what was it about Hunt the Wumpus that you were like, I gotta get in on this?
I don't know. For me, it was addicting to try to find my way around without getting killed.
All right, nice. Okay. All right. So you were inspired by Hunt the Wumpus, which, by the way, I thought you were totally trolling me when you said the name of the game. I was like, what the
No,
what is Tiger we're talking about? So so you get into Hunt the Wumpus, you're playing it on your TI 99, right? You're going crazy, and you're like, I need to learn how to make these games.
no. Wanting to learn how to make or programming came much later. Obviously, I went through the NES, the Genesis, Super Nintendo, all those generations of consoles. But it wasn't until I got to high school and we moved to another state that I had a friend who was into programming. And so he kind of showed me on the side how to do some really simple programming. He talked me into taking a programming class in high school, which led to me doing a projects class. And in the projects class, I made a 3D tic-tac-toe game.
Nice. And so you make your first game, you get excited. So at what point do you say, hey, I want to turn this into a career?
Career point didn't come until probably midway through college, I'd say.
No, what'd you initially go to college for?
I wasn't sure. So my first year, I took a bunch of classes, including one C class for programming. And then I went off and did a 2-year mission. During that time on the mission, I was asked to be in the mission office where I started programming a bunch of stuff to help streamline things that we were doing. And then that got me into wanting programming or computer science as my career path. And then when I came back from the mission, went back to college at a different college and majored in computer science.
So you have your major, you're ready to go. It's time to get in the real world here, Chief. Let's be a professional. It's time to make some money. So you go out and describe. Or at this point, are you thinking, let's go get a job in this video game industry, this industry that I grew up playing, I've loved, and but what's the time frame here?
Yeah, so my last year of college, I was obviously looking for stuff, and I'd already taken some graphics classes, user interface, a bunch of other stuff that could apply to gaming. In terms of math, there was one math class I took called linear algebra, dealing with matrix and vector math, which is used quite a bit in 3D rendering and 3D environments. But so I was going through that process. I was interviewing with like chip manufacturers and graphics card manufacturers, a bunch of different places, even just like run-of-the-mill database places or government contract work, just doing software engineering. But on the side, I had applied to over 70 game jobs just by looking through every game that I had, every game I'd heard of, and every company that made those, and just applying to everything I could find online. Nothing really came from most of that. I got a phone call from EA Tiburon and talked to I think their Madden team at the time. But it really didn't go anywhere until our college had a job fair. And at the job fair, I was walking around talking to Boeing and a bunch of other big companies. And then I saw a guy standing by a small table, and he was the president of a small game company. And I gave him my resume. He looked at it for a second. He said, "This doesn't impress me. You have 1 minute to talk me into going any further." So I just told him everything I'd done, all the games I'd played, how into gaming and programming I was. And then he gave me the card for his hiring manager, which later led to me getting in. You're muted, Craig.
I'm over here giggling about the idea that this guy's like, that does not impress me. Like, what an intimidating asshole, if they don't mind me saying. But I'm glad you got the job. Okay, so what's the time frame here? Like, what do you what is
that was in 2000.
Okay, so this is 2000. You're finishing up college, 2000. You have impressed this guy. You now have a job. What is your job when you enter the industry? What are you doing?
So when I first entered, obviously low-level programmer. The first game I was put on was codenamed MacArthur. It was going to be, I believe, Rainbow Six 3. So I was working on a few different systems, including a virtual planning system, because I played the Rainbow Six games and I didn't like how the planning worked. So I tried to make a 3D planning environment. A few months into that, Red Storm was bought by Ubisoft and they canceled everything.
Okay, so you were working. What was the company you were working for here? Am I looking at this?
Sapphire.
Sapphire. Okay, so you're working for Sapphire, and you said they were acquired by EA.
No. Red Storm that owned the licensing for all the Tom Clancy games. They were acquired by Ubisoft.
Got it.
That's why Splinter Cell and all the other games that came after came from Ubisoft.
And then they shelved it. They shelved what you were working on.
Yeah. Although about a year later, I did see a leak of the concept video that we put together.
Huh.
So it's somewhere on the internet. I tried looking it up on YouTube. I couldn't find it.
How's that stuff get out?
I have no idea. Like I never even had the video file, so I don't know.
Nice. Okay, so you the first game you're working on gets canceled.
Oh yeah.
How does that make you feel right off the bat?
First of many games. It was disappointing because I really liked the Tom Clancy genre or games or the type of stuff that they were doing, especially Rainbow Six. And prior to joining the company, I'd already read the Rainbow Six novel, so I was familiar with the lore and the world that he put together. So yeah, it was disappointing, but they quickly moved me over to another game team.
And what were you working on then?
The next team I worked with was Lego Bionicle.
Okay. So what are we talking? Okay, this is the turn of millennium, right? This is 2000, 2001-ish or so. How big are we talking as far as the teams go for these games?
When I was on MacArthur, it was about, well, I think it was me and one other programmer. And then we had a couple artists. Yeah, it was a small team, but it was prototype phase. So
right.
you don't ramp up when you're doing that because it's just a waste of money. When I got onto the Lego Bionicle team, we eventually peaked around maybe 7 programmers.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's, I mean, when you see the teams, and we're very much fast forwarding here, right? But you see teams yeah, right. Like, I don't know, looking in from the outside, looking in, it just seems incredibly bloated.
Yes,
I feel like you could Elon Musk the industry and take 80% of the people working in it and it would still function just fine. But that's just me.
You'd have to take the right people, but I don't know if you could take 80%. There's a bunch of fluff jobs that could probably go. Well, they should definitely go first, but like if you cut it too small, depending on how much content and how big you want the game, you're never going to ship.
Right. Okay. Well, let's just. But the idea is that there is a lot of fluff. There's a lot of fat that can easily be cut. What are some of like the fluff jobs that you would, you said fluff jobs. Like give me a good descriptor of like what that would be in today's industry.
There's a lot of game teams that are heavy on people who just handle managing schedules and managing tasks, who does what, when, and tracking down whether or not they're doing it. If you had
the job
police. A lot of that work should be in the hands of the individuals. You should own your own schedule. You should be responsible for the work that you are required to get done and how long it'll take you to do it. It shouldn't be someone just walking around every day saying, "Hey, how are you doing? How far are you on this task or this feature?" I was never a fan of that system.
No, I can't imagine anybody wanting to do what you're passionate about and have somebody looking over your shoulder at all times tapping.
It didn't happen in the early industry. Like the early game teams I was on, they were so small and so fast that you were just given a list of things to do and you went and did it. Or your manager would come to you, or a designer or artist would come to you and say, "Hey, can you try this?" And then you go try it. Okay,
so let's talk about that because that's interesting to me. At what point did you see these kind of fluff jobs start popping up and you're like, what's Jill doing? Why does Jill need to know everything that I'm doing? Or whatever. At what point does this begin to pop up in the industry?
I don't know if it's the industry or the companies. So
Okay.
I really noticed it when I moved to EA.
Mhm.
Obviously, EA being a big corporation, lots of big teams, big IPs. They had a lot of people that would handle the task management and all that junk that I couldn't stand.
So this was what time frame are we looking here when you went to
That
EA?
was 2003.
Okay, so
That's when it
2003.
started. But over time, teams got more and more bloated at various levels.
Right, right. So you worked on games according to your LinkedIn. You worked on a lot of the sports games, FIFA and MVP, Major League Baseball, NBA Live '06, NCAA Baseball '06. A lot of sports games. Those are big money makers for EA, obviously, major franchises that have grown into billion-dollar revenue sources. What was kind of the I grew up in an era where you played sports games, right? You played games, you played all sorts of games. You played your fighting game, you played your platforming game, you also played your sports game, right? Um, but sports games were also a little more arcadey. They got a little more simulation. They always wanted to be a little more real, and I think that kind of started with John Madden football in particular. That was his thing. He wanted to be like extremely real. That was like his game was the first to have like 11 players on it, right? On each team. That was like a really big deal. What was it like in EA working on these sports titles? Were they thought of as on par with the other major IPs that were going, or I mean, these were obviously going to be annual releases. Kind of describe the work environment working on those games.
Yeah, so it depends on the person. For me, it was soul sucking because I can't stand sports games.
How do you really feel about it, Tiger?
Like, I never played sports games. Sports games, rhythm games, music games. That stuff was never for me. Like, give me a shooter, give me a strategy game, action game, platformer, whatever, RPG, just not sports. But well, I mean, if we back up a little bit, I was at 3DO. 3DO
Yeah.
went bankrupt.
Uh-huh.
We can get into, I mean, if you want to go into kind of how that fell apart, we can.
I would love to go into 3DO
Okay.
in a minute, but first I want
Yeah.
to hear about how soul sucking working on these games was. Please continue.
Yeah. So I got hired by EA Canada, and their primary focus was sports. So they had FIFA, NBA, NHL, MVP baseball, all these sports games. And that was the primary focus of that studio for the company. And as such, I mean, I went where the job was. I never really got to choose what games I worked on for the most part until much later in my career when I actually had enough experience behind me.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, you do what you need to do. But the annual sports churn was it was a grind because every year you had to be out by a certain date. For baseball, it was always in February, which means the lead up to get it shipped out was right around Christmas.
Mm.
So whereas most game teams will take a lot of time off during December, baseball team, that's not going to happen.
Are you a sports fan?
No.
Okay.
I was a baseball fan back in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
Used to like the Yankees, but no.
So you don't have a whole lot of passion for like sports games. You don't have a whole lot of passion for sports in general. They're like, hey, let's go make these sports games. Like, that seems fairly counterproductive. You want to put people in a situation where they are where they're passionate about what they want to do. Was this a common reoccurrence for other people?
For other people, yes. For me, like I said, I would do anything to get in and stay in the industry. So, like,
Right.
when 3DO went under, my life was a mess financially and everything else. So I needed a job, and they were the first ones to say, "Here, come up to Canada."
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's take a step back and let's talk about 3DO. Right, 3DO, I think to me is one of the, I guess for lack of a better phrase, it's one of the bigger failures in the video game industry. It's you're talking about Panasonic. It was their big go. at video games, and it definitely crashed and burned, I would say, in the grand scheme of things. You were there on the inside of it. Kind of walk me through what it was like working for somebody who was trying to compete. At that time, you're talking about PlayStation, the Xbox is around the corner. Nintendo has, let's see, this is at the 2000s, so the GameCube is on its way.
It was out when I was there.
Okay, so what was that like?
So I started working at 3DO as a contractor while I was at a startup company that never made any money. So 3DO was looking for extra programming help. They somehow got in touch with our small little company. They wanted to hire me to help out. And so I accepted to work for them. I was flying out, or I was living in California while my family was in another state. And I would fly back home every other weekend. So I was basically living in a hotel, kind of a long-term hotel for, I think, 3 or 4 months while I was doing that. And that was to get high heat baseball out the door. They gave me ownership of the Xbox platform for it. So I got it up and running on the Xbox. I added a whole bunch of extra features that they weren't planning to add because I was digging through the documentation, trying to figure out how to do things. I figured out how to do updated rosters for the baseball game after we shipped, so that as people were traded around or moved around in the teams, we could get those updates out to the players and they could actually keep up.
Well, and how did that happen? That's pretty cool for 2004. You're updating rosters, and I think that's the big thing when it comes to sports games. Just annual releases. People are like, well, they're just roster updates. What are they really doing, right? And you were doing this 20 years ago. So how did that happen?
It was when Xbox Live first released. The easiest thing to release on Xbox Live was small little files that you could download to the games folder, and then the game simply checked to see if it was there. If it was, you use that for the roster. Otherwise, you'd use whatever's baked on the disc.
Okay, that's pretty fun. Easy. It seems fairly low-hanging fruit, but the idea that you were able to do it, nowadays you'd be charged for an update. you'd be charged for that update of your rosters. So you're spending time at EA. You're knocking out these soul-sucking sports games. Kind of walk me through. You eventually go from programmer to technical director of multiple projects or many projects along the way. How did that progression work, and what are some games that you TD'd on?
TD'd on most of them. So obviously started out as a programmer when I first got to Electronic Arts. I was there as a programmer for 2 versions of MVP Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
After that shipped, the Xbox 360 was about to come out. So we got the Xenon kits and we started porting stuff over onto renderware. And then I was loaned out to a shared tools team from MVP Baseball to help put together tools using the renderware engine that all the game teams within sports could use. That was the most boring job I had in my entire career. It was during that time that the MLB gave an exclusive license to one of the competitors. So EA could no longer use the license on their games.
Mm-hmm.
When I heard that, the baseball team was trying to figure out what they were going to do next, which eventually led to NCAA baseball. But I started looking around within the company, and there was a small spin-up group that was making PSP games. And they were looking for engineering leads to lead really, really small projects. They were basically porting existing titles over onto the PSP. So I interviewed with them and got hired to lead the team porting what was originally going to be SSX 3, I think, but eventually got changed into NBA Live 06.
Wait. So you were going to work on SSX 3, but you got changed to NBA Live 06?
Yes, they hired me for SSX, and then they put me on NBA Live.
Okay. But pretty different. I mean, still sports, right? But at the same time,
I played SSX.
Yeah, SSX was brilliant. This is the era that it was EA Sports Big, because there was the EA Sports games and there was the EA Sports.
No, yeah, Big was kind of a few of the titles, like the street games were under the Big.
Right. They were like the more arcadey style games, right? Well, that's fun. So what was like the, we kind of went through before and kind of talking about some of the like pivotal moments in your career. Like can you kind of talk through some of those as you made your way up the corporate ladder?
Yeah, so this leads directly into that. So this was the first time I actually led people instead of just being told what to do. I had a small group, maybe 5 engineers, maybe 6.
Mm-hmm.
We were working on porting NBA Live while the main team was building the game. So we would constantly get updates from the team and try to squeeze it down into a PSP, which was all kinds of fun.
Right.
But after finishing that and shipping that game, I went back over to NCAA baseball. And a few weeks into or a few months into that project, I heard a rumor that they were spinning up a new Revolution team. So I asked around, I tried to find who was working on the Revolution. How do I get on the team? What can I do? I eventually.
And to be clear, we're talking about the Wii.
The Wii. Yeah. The Wii before was the Wii. Yeah.
The code name was the Revolution. Yes.
Yeah. It was probably 6 months before they announced the name at E3.
Okay. Then that was, so they announced the Wii this was June 2006, because that was my first E3. And I was just, total side note, I was one of the first people in line to see the Wii, because I told the story before, but E3 wasn't as secure as it is, or at least it was towards the tail end. So I walked in. I've always been on the idea of like, if you just act like you're supposed to be there, you probably are. So I walked in. Somebody didn't check my badge. I went to the restroom and I stayed in the restroom before the show floor opened. And I went out and got in line for the Nintendo booth about 15 minutes before the show floor opened. I think I was like the 6th person in line to see the Wii. And I remember the line for the Wii was like 6.5 hours, something like that.
Oh, yeah. It was massive.
Yeah.
I got to skip the line, so that was nice.
Yeah. Well, of course you were in. You knew. What was it like? So you hear about this Revolution, the Wii project team, and okay. So continue your story. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So I found eventually someone pointed me to the executive producer who was over the entire kind of the group that was going to spin this up. So I went and talked to him and said, "Hey, I'm just coming over from the PSP group where I was leading a small game team. It'd be great if I could be on one of the teams and maybe lead like the rendering and systems guys or something like that, something small." So he said, "Yeah, we're not really looking for anything like that. So I'll get back to you." 2 or 3 days later, I was asked to come back to his office, where he asked me to be the technical director for the entire group doing 3 projects.
And what were those 3 projects?
Madden, it was Madden 07, FIFA 07, I believe, NBA Live, no, Madden, FIFA, and Medal of Honor Airborne.
So let's talk about, the Wii wasn't exactly a graphical powerhouse back in the day. It was definitely more of a, I don't know, for lack of a better word, it was more of a casual system, right? You had a much broader audience. It had its hardcore games, but for the most part, it was built for, mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and everybody to play together. What was it like developing for, specifically when you're dealing with something that's not even out yet? You're dealing with a console that is still 6 months out from getting a name. What is that like developing on something that is at this point top secret and you can't share about?
For me, that's what I prefer to do. Like the best times I had in games were when I was porting something over, getting something spun up on brand new hardware, trying to figure out some big new problem. So we had a pretty small game team that was split between 3 projects. Eventually, I made the mistake of taking one day off because I was sick. And when I came back, they dissolved 2 of our teams. They got
Wait,
sucked into one of the other big projects.
wait, what? You took a day off and what happened?
I came back and we only had the Madden team left. The other teams got absorbed into, I think it was one of the FIFA spin-off games. I can't remember which one, but they needed lots of people. So they just sucked up everyone we had.
Wow. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And sad at the same time. It's like, well, Tigor's gone. Let's just dissolve those teams. There we are. Sorry, you got the flu for a day. Wow. So very volatile environment.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
right?
Everything changed all the time. But the core team that was left was really tight. We had one of the UI artists made little badges or little inserts we could put behind our badge that had Mario on a red background, pumping his fist in the air saying "Viva la Revolution." And so we had that. Everyone wanted to get one, but obviously you could only get it if you were actually on our team. But going back to the porting and the hardware pre-release, so the Wii hardware was essentially a GameCube 1.5 in terms of power. So they just put slightly better graphics and memory and things like that into it. So what I did was I set up my programming team so that we would each take part of the game. We were preparing for the software development kit drop, which is the interface that we use to talk to the hardware. And we each took parts of that so that as soon as the software development kit dropped, we could quickly get the game up and compiling. And then when the hardware came 3 or 4 days later, we could try to get it on the hardware as fast as possible. Myself and one other programmer stayed super late Thursday, Friday, and then all day Saturday, getting it up and running so that when our leadership team came in on Monday to do their weekly sync to say, hey, where are we at? What are we going to do this week? I rolled in a cart with a TV on it, turned it on, and let them play Madden.
Man, so that's it's fun. So you said something really quick. The way you described the revolution, it was 1.5 of what? It was
a GameCube 1.5.
1.5. That's interesting way to talk about it. It wasn't a 2. It was just like, it was slightly better. So you spend time developing these sports games, all soul sucking at the time, and you spend time with EA doing as you said, soul sucking games. But you did spend some time. You spent some time on Command and Conquer, Red Alert 3, according to your LinkedIn, and
Red Alert 3 and Command and Conquer 4.
Right. So you spent time doing both those. So how was that working on those games?
So after about 5 years in Canada, I told them that I was done living in Canada, paying the super high taxes and everything else. I was going to go back to the States. So I interviewed with a bunch of EA studios down in the States, including Los Angeles. During the interview process, they had to explain to me that they were the EA Spouse team. EA Spouse was a big controversy probably in 2004, I believe, where someone who was the wife of a member of the team working on the Command and Conquer series leaked something to the press about the crazy long hours and all this other just junk about the games industry itself and how insane it was in terms of what it was pushing people to do. So they had to disclose that as I was interviewing with them. But regardless, I still liked RTS games. So it was a way for me to get out of the sports genre and jump over to something I actually liked.
So I'm pulling up a quick Wikipedia note about. I've never heard of this EA Spouse. Like, this is before I entered the internet and talking about this stuff. So and tell me if this is just from Wikipedia. This could be totally wrong, but as from your recollection of all this stuff, it says in 2004, Hoffman, who is Aaron Hoffman, this is an American game developer, blogger, and fantasy writer. Hoffman became known for an initially anonymous blog post under the name EA Spouse. The post made in November 2011 to LiveJournal sharply criticized the labor practices of EA. It was widely distributed in the video game industry. In 2006, Hoffman's identity as the poster was made public. Hoffman's actions in part led to the filing of 3 class action lawsuits against EA and some charges throughout the industry, changes throughout the industry at large, such as the reclassification of entry-level artists as hourly employees, thus making them eligible for overtime in California law. Her fiance, EA employee Leander Hasty, are you familiar with this person?
No.
Okay. Was the main plaintiff of in the successful class action suit on behalf of software engineers at EA, which in 2007 awarded the plaintiffs $14.9 million for unpaid overtime. After the affair and the court action, Hoffman and Hasty founded Game Watch, a watchdog organization meant to facilitate discussions between employees at different companies. It was closed in 2012, so it obviously didn't have a very big lifespan. That's interesting, man. That's I'd never heard that before. So you were hired into that team.
Yeah. Yep. I was hired into a small. We were doing a spin-off of Command & Conquer while the main team was working on Red Alert 3. I was obviously jumped over there to help them out with a bunch of memory problems and other things. But my team was originally Command & Conquer Arena, which was going to be very different from what it ended up shipping as. That was... The game was a free-to-play, 5-player Command & Conquer RTS game. It was going to have skins that you could buy and things like that. That didn't really affect the gameplay. But when marketing was brought on to try to figure out how to sell it, they were like, we don't know what to do with this. We barely even know what to do with an RTS game. And you want us to try to market a free-to-play RTS game, stick a 4 on it, call it Command & Conquer 4, and push it out the door, was their response.
Wow.
So if for anyone who played Command & Conquer 4, if it feels significantly different than Command & Conquer 3, that's why. Because it was never built to be Command & Conquer 4.
What was that like? I mean, you see when marketing gets associated with something, sometimes that's where a lot of great ideas go to die. You know, that seems kind of seems like the opposite of what you'd expect from a marketing division to do. They'd want to be able to highlight what makes it so much different, or what makes it unique. Was that an occurrence that happened usually, or was a usual occurrence where marketing would come in and they just more or less, for lack of a better word, just fuck it up?
For Command & Conquer, yes. Command & Conquer died, I think, because of marketing. In my opinion, based on what I saw, because I never interact with the marketing team or anything like that, but I was told that marketing pushed us to become Command & Conquer 4. And then shortly before we actually finished and released the game, they told the entire division that they were shutting down all RTS development and everyone was going to get laid off because they no longer knew how to market an RTS game.
Just because they didn't know how to market it, like, we're not going to make these games anymore. We don't know we don't know how to market them, so we're just going to lay everybody off.
Yeah, instead of hiring one person who could do their job and do it right, they get rid of like 100 plus people.
That's a bit. That's. I wish I could say that's so EA. That seems like such an EA thing to do. All right, as we continue on through your career here, and I feel like a lot of people want to hear about, when you left the industry, DEI and the state of AAA gaming, things like that. We have in the title. We'll get to all that stuff. I would like to remind everybody once again, we're going to start this stream over on YouTube. We're going to start it over on Rumble. Everything that you're seeing right now. The stream will be ending over at Locals. That is a direct link to that will be at sidescrollerspodcast.com. You can find the link to that down below. So in about 20 minutes or so, we're going to make the switch over there. We're going to spend the second half of our time together talking there. So once again, head over there. It is free to make an account over there. We're going to be doing some exclusive stuff over there as we want to push outside of YouTube and outside of Rumble. We love you guys. We love it. But at the same time, you can never be too sure, right? So we got to make sure we have a place that's outside of YouTube and Rumble, everywhere else, that we feel safe and pretty and wonderful. So head over there, make an account. It is totally free. If you'd like to support, you absolutely can. If not, no worries. Totally cool. But that is how you'll be able to watch the second half of this of our chat today. So with that said, let us continue. So you spend time at EA. You later moved to Microsoft, and that's kind of interesting. We're talking about, this worst company in America. Then you go to Microsoft. How did you get over to Microsoft?
So it was during the layoff process.
Mm-hmm.
So after they announced that they were going to lay us off, they let us work for a couple more months to get the game out the door.
Okay.
During that time, I was looking for anything I could find. I was interviewing with a bunch of companies, including Microsoft, and what was the other big one down there? League of Legends was another one that I was talking to them. But besides focusing on just getting the game out the door, I was also trying to find myself a job and find jobs for other people on my team, because it sucked what they were doing to the entire game team. So everyone in the industry that I had contacts for, I reached out to them and tried to see if their companies were hiring, and then referring as many people as I could into those companies. So I interviewed with Microsoft. During the interview, I got what a lot of people would consider is a really difficult question. I had a 1 hour interview with one of the engineering leads, and he asked me to write a memory manager on his massive whiteboard in 1 hour. He expected me to just write the header definition, but I whipped that out as fast as I could. And he was like, "Oh, that was fast. We still got time. Start writing the actual code to do the memory management itself." And I'm pretty sure that's what got me that job.
That's awesome. Good. So you make the jump over to Microsoft, and kind of guide me through what's the first project you begin working on over there?
Yeah. So I was hired to spin up a small publishing team to help out with the project that eventually became Kinect Adventures, which shipped with the actual Kinect hardware.
Wow. Kinect Adventures.
Yeah. So there was an internal team working on the game, but it was made up of a bunch of little mini games, and they didn't have enough mini games in their development cycle to actually make it worth the value. So they asked Turn 10, who I was hired by. Turn 10 makes the Forza racing games. They asked Turn 10 to help out. Turn 10 decided to spin up this publishing team. I hired some engineers to bring on and to help manage projects. Yeah, that was 2,000 leaks or something like that. I can't remember what they called it. And then we hired, I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 external companies, each to work on a different mini game. And my team managed those projects, as well as integrating all of their changes over into the main line without breaking the project.
Okay. There's such a bigger conversation here that I'm fascinated with, and I hope you don't mind me asking these questions.
Yeah, go for it.
When it came to the Kinect, it seemed like such a response to the Wii, right?
Yeah.
Like the Wii, oh, it's kicking ass. We need something, right? And then we had Kinect Adventures, you had Kinectimals or whatever, where you're like petting the cat or the whatever, and it seemed, for lack of a better term, rushed, right? As far as just the overall idea of it, it was reactionary instead of being something that was obviously the original idea, right? How did it feel working on that? You went from these EA games. I can't imagine you were like, I really want to work on this motion control thing. Like, what was that like?
So 2 things there. Well, a few. So I was coming off of a job loss. So I was looking for anything I could get. It was with Microsoft, which at the time had what was referred to as a Cadillac health plan. They covered 100% of everything.
Okay.
Which Obamacare got rid of a year later. And then Kinect, I figured was a reasonable jumping place to get in because of my experience with the Wii and porting to new hardware and going back to how I like using new hardware. It was the only new thing hardware wise at the time. Plus, it was working for Turn 10. I like racing games. Turn 10 makes, in my opinion, the best racing series out there with the Forza Motorsport and the Horizon series. So any way I could get my foot in the door with them, I was going to do it.
So you did, and you started with Kinect. Then you actually did end up working on Forza, right? Am I saying that right? Forza.
Forza, yeah, it's a kind of a TS sound for the Z.
Yeah, okay, that's I've always thought it was Forza, right? Or it'd be like you hear like an Italian say it, and it sounds really weird. But okay, so you get into Forza, and you're like, oh, like, and this, I'm guessing for the first time, if you talk about, oh, I hated working on these sports games, and you're like, oh, I got to work on Kinect. At what point in your career in video games do you get to start working on games that you're super passionate about? At what point does that happen?
So obviously with Command and Conquer, I liked the RTS genre,
Sure.
but definitely with Forza, especially when we hired Playground Games for Forza Horizon, taking the Forza engine, moving it to an open world, it's way more fun, in my opinion, because it's not as sterile.
So you're finally working on something that you're passionate about. I see on your LinkedIn also you have Killer Instinct as well, as a credit. Which Killer Instinct that was a game that way back at Screw Attack, that was a game that we were like begging for, like a new Killer Instinct. We did a top 10 games that needed to be made, and this was like in 2008, and I think KI was like KI 3 may have been like number 1 or number 2, right? I think, but looking back on the list, the irony is like I think every single game on the list has been made at some point. And KI was like a really big deal. So much so that I remember when Killer Instinct was announced at E3, going back, this is, man, the memories are flowing right now.
Probably 2012 or 2013.
I think it was 2013, because it was announced at E3, and then this was I think really cool of the industry at the time. So KI was announced. I'm sitting in the E3 media space when it's announced. I'm watching the presentation, and I think it was like within 2 weeks of E3, we were going to have our big convention, which was called SGC, Screw Attack Gaming Convention, and we every year at this convention we had a video game tournament, and it was built around the idea of finding the best gamer that from all consoles, all genres, and all eras. And the final game of the tournament was always a mystery game, right? So we always worked with the developer to bring out some game that's never been seen before. Well, that year, within that game being announced, and within 2 weeks of that happening, Killer Instinct was. We worked a deal to get Killer Instinct as the final game of our tournament. Like 2 weeks after it was announced, I worked with Filthy. I don't know if you remember Filthy Rich. He was like the main dude there. But so Killer Instinct to me, when it was first announced, that was like legendary. It was, if you look on YouTube, you can find videos of it being announced and stuff. Yeah. So what was your role? What was your role with KI? Because this is just me being a fanboy now.
Yeah. So after being with Turn 10 for about 5 years, working on a bunch of racing games, I eventually hit the point where I was like, okay, we're doing the same thing over and over and over again. So I looked within Microsoft for other teams. I was hired by the global publishing team for Xbox. And I was put on a few different projects working with external studios, one of which was Killer Instinct. Killer Instinct had already shipped season 1. They were about to ship season 2. And then I was prepping for season 3 and moving it to the PC, take care of that port.
That's awesome. That is, love it. Cool. All right. So we have a pretty good background of your history inside the gaming space, right? You're very well accomplished. Then eventually in 2018, you make the jump. Well, I guess so. It looks like, based off your LinkedIn, I'm going off here. looks like you left Microsoft in September 2018. You eventually went over to Wizards of the Coast. So how did you end up over at Wizards of the Coast?
So in July of 2018, there was a big round of layoffs. So I got an email Monday morning from my boss, asked me to come in and meet with him in a room that wasn't his office. So I went in, I was walking down the hall. I was crossing a bridge inside the building where I could see into the windows of the office that the conference room we were going to meet in. And I saw him sitting next to someone else. And I was like, oh, I know what this is. So I went in, sat down, found out that I was getting laid off. During the actual meeting, they told me, because we were supposed to be getting our bonuses a few months later, they told us there was going to be no bonus. It was going to be effective a week later, all this stuff. But then they gave me the big packet of paperwork. And in the paperwork, I found, yes, we do get the bonuses. And we did end up getting the bonus because they missed the deadline by a week, putting in there.
Suckers, let's go. Well, that's good. That's good. Rightfully so, right? So so you get laid off, and we're gonna continue with your career, then we're gonna take a step back to the video game industry and everything that people are interested in. But you ended up over at Wizards of the Coast. I guess did they come to you or did you go to them?
No. So after the layoff, I took a month or two just to decompress, do nothing, just actually enjoy life for once. And then I started looking around. I interviewed with a bunch of companies. I interviewed with like the God of War team to help manage their engineering team, Bethesda, and some other companies around that were looking to do publishing. Eventually, one of my friends and former colleagues who also got laid off from Microsoft hit me up and said, hey, Wizards of the Coast is looking for a technical director for the publishing team. They've been looking for months. They can't find anyone who it fits. Will you at least, reach out and interview with them? So I did, got the offer pretty quick. Later found out that I was completely lowballed on what they offered me, and they didn't pay me anywhere near what they should have.
Okay.
But that's how I got in, because it ended up being about 6 months after I got laid off that I picked up that job.
Okay. You get lowballed. What a bummer. So you spend about 3 years with Wizards of the Coast.
Yep.
And what did you do while you were there? You got a couple game credits. Kind of give everybody the overview there.
Yeah, so we had a lot of projects go in development with a bunch of other studios. I spent a lot of my time going out, talking to new game teams, trying to evaluate whether or not their game pitch was going to be viable. Most of the time I said no. One game team, I said I would never hire them for this game or any other game, and Wizards of the Coast bought them.
Wow.
And there was one project in our portfolio that I was like, wow, this is a great D&D game. I can't wait to play this game. I want to see this game made. It never came out. It was canceled after I left. And it was that's what I wanted to leave the industry after shipping that. But I ended up leaving after shipping one of the worst games on my entire portfolio and career.
How many games would you say that you've worked on that have been canceled? Let's start there. Number one, canceled, and then I'll follow up with another question.
Canceled far into development or a few months in?
Let's say far into development. So it's where you were like, all right, we're going to see the light of day with this thing.
Two big ones were canceled pretty far in. A bunch of them were canceled within 6 months of starting. That number is probably 8 to 10, at least. I'd have to really sit down and write them all down.
Are there any games that really you were like, oh, that could have been awesome? Or are they just, were they more or less, your annual release style games?
I thought Lego Bionicle would have been good because it's the first real game I'd worked on pretty much start to finish. Plus, it would have been my first game credit. I didn't get a game credit until almost 3 years into my career. But yeah, but the other games that were canceled, I had no problem with those until that one big game that never came to be. But that was after I left the company.
Right. Wow. Okay. So you've been very long career. 20 plus years in any industry is a long time. And honestly, please don't allow me to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like it was hard, soul sucking work along the way.
It got, well, the soul sucking part got better over time. The long also got better because early games, I would do all-nighters trying to get a milestone out the door. And my engineering lead would get me breakfast from Denny's and bring it to my desk.
Yeah.
Nice. But like my wife hated those years.
Right. Well, you there is a point where you're young, you got to kind of earn your stripes a little bit. You do spend a little bit more time. You don't have a family necessarily, outside of a husband or a wife or whatever, but when kids kind of come into play, things change a little bit. Your life goals change a little bit. And, I think we've all been there for sure. Dave comes in and says, regardless of the allure of working in the games industry, it's still work and a job. And some days are fun and other days are just boring work. Dave, welcome to life. Welcome to life. Absolutely. That is very, very true. Do you have and once again, I'd like to remind everybody, we're going to be moving exclusively over to sidescrollerspodcast.com momentarily. Open up a new window right now. It's just a few minutes. You make a free account over there. Once again, totally free. If you want to support, you absolutely can. We're going to continue the conversation over there. We're going to get into, all the DEI stuff. Why exactly Tiger left the industry. There was a moment in particular that really resonated with him. The DEI aspects of things, some of the things that he's seen, some red flags, things like that. We're going to get into the nitty gritty. So I encourage you guys to make an account once again over at sidescrollerspodcast.com. That redirects to our locals page. Once again, it is free to make an account. So one last thing before we move over there. Was there like a moment in your career over the 20 years you spent in the industry? Was there a game that shipped that you were like, or like a moment that you were like extremely proud of, that you don't feel like that most people probably would never have known?
I'd say the biggest one was Madden Wii, because that one really turned my career around. No other game like prior to that E3, no one else in EA was really even looking at the revolution because they all thought it was just a gimmick. It was nothing. But once the press ate it up, everyone started turning to us and to the team that I was on, and I ended up holding a symposium where we had people from all the other game studios come and learn from my team how to make games on the Wii, how to deal with the gestures, and how to get it out.
That's awesome. So you were in early when it came to the Wii. You were a grandfather, if you will. You were the guy everybody looked to for tips and tricks.
Yeah, for about the first year or so. And Madden Wii, after it shipped, was the highest rated non-Nintendo game on the Wii for the first year.
Wow, it's got to be a pretty cool thing. Obviously, Nintendo first party titles, those were like the bread and butter when it comes to the Wii, right? But having a high quality third, especially when you're developing something that doesn't even have a name, at the time, like you're developing for something that's not released and you don't know how to leverage the technology to its full potential. I think that's pretty awesome. Pretty good stuff right there. Master Gawa came in with the wonderful $10 super chat. Thank you so much, Master Gawa. Genuinely appreciate that. It says the creeping necrosis may have begun before her presence, but gaming died when the Nita Sarkeesian and our feminist frequency came in the scene. It just taking a long while to fully flatline. Thank you very much, Master Gawa. Appreciate that. All right. So look, we're in just a few minutes. We're going to be talking about, well, as pretty much as soon as we're done over here on YouTube, we're going to be getting into why specifically he left the video game industry. We're going to be getting into DEI, when the first time he saw some of the changes that took place. So I encourage you guys to join us over there literally right now. Go to sidescrollerspodcast.com. The link is in the description. It is also on your screen right now. So we're going to make that transition right now. Once again, it is free to make an account. You go over there, put your email in, and you'll also get notified whenever we go live. Right now, there's over 100 folks waiting to continue the show over there. And you can also have way more fun with your chat. You can post GIFs and pictures and all sorts of stuff. It's way more interactive. So appreciate you guys tuning in over here on YouTube. Appreciate you guys tuning in over on Rumble. Appreciate you guys tuning in over on X and Kick and everywhere else. With that said, Kick, I'm going to say goodbye to you. Goodbye, Kick. X, I'm going to say goodbye to you. Goodbye, X. Rumble, you guys have a great day. We'll see you guys later on. And YouTube, guys, thank you very much. Once again, head over to sidescrollerspodcast.com. That will redirect you to our locals page, which is a site off of YouTube, as we're going to be doing more and more stuff over there. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. We'll continue the show over at locals right now. And